Hello, listeners and YouTube viewers. I am so happy that you are here. Welcome to I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. Once again, I'm bringing you so much wonderful content. Today's going to be fun. This is going to be a really fun conversation. And I have a little fun fact. My little fun fact is, and I don't know if anyone knows this about me, if I were not a life coach, I would be a sex therapist. It's something I truly believe we've put a stigma on. I believe none of us were told the things we should have been told. We were not allowed freedom in this area. So I have two fantastic guests here today. And I'm just going to let them introduce themselves. You know how I normally do my bio readings, but I thought it would be fun for them to talk about who they are and what they do. So first, we're going to start with Leah Piper and let us know, what is it that you do and you're passionate about?
Well, thanks, Maureen. Thanks for having us on the show. First and foremost, I am a co-host of the Sex Reimagined podcast with Dr.Willow Brown, who's here with us today. It's a passion project we really have a lot of fun with. But for the last 20 plus years, I have been an advanced certified tantra educator, holding weekend seminars, vacation seminars for singles and couples to teach them all about the art of conscious loving. Because I really think that what's unique about tantra is that it's the great beautifier of sex. It has such a beautiful devotional spirit to it. It really works with cultivation practice such as cultivating trust, cultivating presence, cultivating real love, being able to put your love out in such a way that your body becomes like a prayer and you experience a spiritual sacred experience when coming together and uniting with somebody else. It has a very beautiful transcendent experience that has a lot of profundity to it. And so I teach people the skills of how to reach those higher states of consciousness in lovemaking, in pleasure, in even meditation, of just being able to come into your own system and get to know the you that's on the inside. So it's this path of being soul to soul with others, and it's very rich. I also work with people individually, both online coaching. I am a positive psychology coach and help people take a look at their whole life and how can they bring more life satisfaction to their world. In addition to that, I work with people privately, one-on-one, in person, where I'm teaching them the skills of tantra in their own body so that they can have a direct experience, because tantra is really an embodiment practice. You can't learn tantra from reading a book or listening to something on YouTube. You actually have to practice it inside your body to know its amazing effects. So that's a little bit about me. Also, I have a company called More Love Works.
Oh, I love that. I love it. And we're gonna definitely do that at the end, where we're gonna make sure that we have all of their links and where to send all of our listeners. And I love the word profundity. I just, that was so much fun. And that one stuck out for me. I had to write it down. You'll see me writing stuff down because my brain just can't take all of it in. I love all of that, Leah, and I cannot wait to get into it with you, because I really believe when it comes to sexuality, you've got to have that connection with spirituality to have the best experience. Otherwise, we are sort of detached. And I think that's the way it is in anything in life. I think we need to have all of the mental, spiritual, and physical combined. So with that, we're going to move to my lovely Miss Dr. Willow Brown. Tell us all about you and what you do and what you're passionate about.
Thanks, Maureen. It's such a pleasure to be here. As Leah said, co-host of the Sex Reimagined podcast, where we get to interview so many different sexperts in the industry about so many different topics. In fact, I was listening to one of your interviews, Maureen, with Lubia Venable, and we had her on our podcast as well. So, it was just really fun to revisit and hear a different conversation, same, but different. So,
Right.
What Leah was speaking to is intimacy on a different level, a different kind of intimacy where you can actually have intimacy with anybody that you choose to. So that's one of the things that living a tantric life really allows you to do, not just with your intimate partner, but you could have intimacy with a dear friend, intimacy with an animal, intimacy with, a tree, intimacy with children. Like you can have different kinds of deeper intimacy when you're walking and practicing a tantric life. So really, really powerful way to live in this world where there's so much distraction and there's so much disillusion going on, and so many people are feeling lost. It's a way to find your essence more deeply. And that's brings it to me and sort of what I've always been a huge proponent and advocate for. By trade, I'm a Chinese medicine doctor, so I've done, everything acupuncture, herbology, craniosacral, all the different kinds of healing and body work you could even ever imagine. And, but I've also been a doula. So there's a deeper level of intimacy for sure. And I've also, done all the teachings, the Qigong and all of that over the years. And so I've really walked a double decade or more career path of just getting really close with people, really intimate with people. It's not uncommon for people to, spend 5 minutes with me and say, oh my God, I never told anyone this before, but I want to tell you. And so I think there's an honor in that. And there's also a way to hold that and so much reverence and so much love and compassion, because we all are carrying demons underneath it all. And, when we have the safety and availability, somebody that we can trust to really like show these shadow parts of ourselves, it helps us become more of ourselves. Helps us become more whole. So I'd say overall, that's what my career path has been about, is like helping people become more whole and more intimate with themselves so that they can overflow that intimacy to the world around them. On the show, on our Sex Reimagined podcast, Leah really brings a lot of the tantric wisdom. She's been doing that for so long. And I bring more of a Taoist approach, Taoist sexuality wisdom. So the Taoist sexual practices, are really about creating health and longevity and openness through your channels, a lot more chi and vitality to different glands in your body, so that you are not somebody who's, hitting their perimenopausal stage and being like, where'd my libido go? What's going on here? So there's so many ways that we don't even that we've never learned or we don't have access to, that can really keep us juicy, alive, vital, and connected to not just the world around us, but more importantly to ourselves.
I love it. I want to be juicy for a very long time. I want to stay juicy. That is my favorite thing that you've just said. I feel so connected to the two of you because I see the world that way. I see the world that way as a master life coach, and I connect with my clients where it's like it's just a different level. And I think in relation to sexuality, having that different level with yourself, it just makes things so much better. My whole entire life was better once I learned that self-love, and I learned that it could be about me. When my whole life I was told, don't be selfish, don't be self-absorbed, self-centered. So that being said, it's a journey, right? And I find us as older women, we are about the same, the three of us in the same age range. I find that it's more freeing the older you get. And I feel you lose sort of the care factor of, I don't care what anybody thinks. Finally, I can be free. And I know my own experience. My first half, if you're with the wrong partner, and we're going to talk about how do you know if you're with the right or wrong partner as far as sexual compatibility. I know for me, I mean, of course, everything else wasn't right in the relationship, but especially when it came to the sex, and that should have been like that red flag moment. So can you tell us if there's a moment when, because I know you probably you coach couples, you probably, tell them where we're having some issues, some disconnect, especially because you guys talk so much about that connection. So when you're talking to people who are having an issue, whether they come in themselves and say they're not enjoying their sexual relationship, or there's a couple that comes in and says they're not enjoying it, what are some of the things that you help them to change, or what kind of advice do you give them?
Well, do you want to start, Leah?
Go for it, babe.
You know, one of the most important things for couples to understand is what their sexual blueprint is, like what turns them on. You know, there's Jaya did a whole thing on these different archetypes, different styles of natural turn on. And if somebody is a more like energetic natural turn on, and then we have a super sexual on the blueprint style who's like, let's just get together, get our skin together, bang it out and fuck, that's going to be very different and not enjoyable for the one who's like, why don't I just whisper on my skin for 10 hours before I get aroused properly, you know? So that's definitely one thing. And then communication is huge. You know, a lot of people will kind of wait until they're in the moment and then be like, what you're doing isn't working for me. They don't have the communication skills. You know, we always tell couples to communicate before you get into the sexy moment, you know, and around communication too, just really understanding like what are your partner's values, like what are their top two core values. I ask couples that all the time, and you know, they've been together for 25 years and they have no idea what their partner's top two core values are, so of course they're not speaking to those values. So that's a very big question, and there are many multiple layers to it. I'm sure Leah's going to have some good advice to throw in there as well.
Yeah, I think what Willow said is also very spot on. Knowing how your system wants to be turned on is an investigation that most people haven't started,
Mm.
especially women, because our eroticism is very rarely spontaneous, our sexuality. It's not like we're just walking around like I'm so horny, I'm so horny, I'm so horny. It's like usually there's something has to happen on the outside for us to get turned on. And also our mind plays a very important role in all of this. Knowing how to use your mind to get turned on, looking at life as with an attitude of I want to be turned on by life. I want to be walking down the street and be lit up from the inside out. I want to feel that openness. I want to feel my senses alive all the time. I want to feel the caress from the sun or the caress from the wind so that I can really feel like I'm in my system and in my body, and everything feels more shimmery. I think we need to really invoke inside of a woman a certain way of feeling beautiful and wanting that kind of attention and presence. And that doesn't come from all these ego fixings. It's not about how sexy you look on the inside. It's really about how sexy can you feel on the inside. And that requires inquiry. It requires going on a bit of adventure. It requires that matters to you. And so I think oftentimes what we do is we feel burdened by someone else's sexual expectations, and then we feel inadequate, like we're not measuring up, like we're not fulfilling some sort of like purpose we were handed into because we got the female genitals. So it's this interesting thing that we have to parse apart. And the thing that I hear men say oftentimes is they just want to feel confident. There's something about who they feel as a sexual being that becomes very diminished when they don't feel like they can turn their partner on, when they feel rejected over and over and over again because they want more sex than their partner wants. And so they feel like they're settling for crumbs, like I'll just get what I can take. And then that has a way of corroding the connection and the partnership. And then you have two people who are feeling really resentful. And I'm talking about right now, I'm referring to heterosexual couples, but the same thing can also be true in same-sex relationships. So it's really about two people coming together and being willing to have two adventures. An adventure that they really consciously show up for each other. And they come from a spirit of, I want to understand you. You're one of the most important people in my life, and how you feel matters to me. And when you have a partner who's willing to extend that same courtesy, that same deep desire to understand their partner, so much can change and evolve in a short amount of time. Unfortunately, most couples aren't doing that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's such a beautiful gift to have somebody special in your life that you get to walk with. And we have to remember to turn towards that and to take a look at our conflicts and not turn away from each other, but continually turn towards each other. So, and then I would say the other adventure that I really encourage couples to go on is a solo adventure. And I'm not suggesting that means going outside of your relationship. I'm saying that you go and you have introspection and you develop your sexuality by learning about your own skin, by going and figuring out what are your desires, what are your deepest, even shadow desires next to your light filled desires, and how can you be more honest about what those mean to you. And then lastly, other thing I want to say about this all is that we have to cultivate a place inside of ourselves that can be less judgmental because we want our partners to feel safe. We want to feel safe, that we can bear this part of our soul, that we can talk about the things that we feel insecure about, including our desires, which we actually often feel insecure about. So when you can foster a safe space for your person to be able to be transparent about all these things, oh, the closeness, even if you don't agree on the stuff, the closeness and the trust that gets developed is the makings of beautiful partnership.
Yeah,
Yes.
one of the fun, edgy things that we sometimes will give couples once they're a little bit further down the path, a little more advanced, is share a sexual desire with your partner that you are like scared to share. That is like super edgy for you, and it doesn't mean that you're going to fulfill it.
Yeah.
So it can be as edgy as you want it to be. Like share with them something in the expectation, even that it's not going to be fulfilled, so that you really feel free and open to express something inside of you, this desire inside of you that's just lurking in the corners, so that
Yeah.
it can come out to light. And just sharing that, and then having the thought of it, while having your regular or your normal sex, can really amplify and stimulate the sexual experience. So it's a fun thing that people, once they get more comfortable with being intimate with each other, which intimacy requires vulnerability, presence, and trust. Those are the three pillars to intimacy. And it is not just trusting them, but it's trusting yourself. I trust myself so much that I can say this thing, and whatever reaction happens outside of me, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to know where my core is. I'm going to be able to come home to myself. So therefore, I trust myself enough to trust you with this thing that's been deep in the corners, deep in the recesses of my mind, and I'm going to share that with you. It's an act of vulnerability. So then you're building this cycle of trust and vulnerability between you and another person. And that just presence is the organic flower that comes from that. So those three things are really what's required to create that deep level of intimacy. And notice that love isn't necessarily one of them. Love could be there, but it doesn't have to be. Like I said, you can have an intimate communication with someone you meet on the street. You don't have to be deeply in love with somebody to be intimate with them.
Ooh, I love all of that so much. I got so much to unpack. You're absolutely right in the fact that, and I love what Leah said and how it related to you, Doctor, is that first of all, 90% of seduction, I think, happens outside of the bedroom. 10% is like, just the act. And I also believe, just like what you said, it's a confidence thing. It's such a carryover from our regular lives, right? If I'm walking down the street and I'm super confident, I don't care what anybody says. I'm not thinking about people judging me. And same way in the bedroom, it should be that freeing, and we should have that openness with a partner. In my book, My Dog is My Relationship Coach, it was one of the things that I really, really emphasized that I hadn't done previous to now meeting my love of my life husband I've been married to for 8 years. And it was asking for something. I always felt, and I think women, as women, we do this. We think it's our job to sort of please them. And if we get off in the meantime, great. But I think there's been this sort of shame factor, I guess, that you're supposed to take care of them because they're the hypersexual ones. They're visual. They like the porn. They like all of this. And you have to try to live up to that expectation. And so one of the things that in my book that I wrote was my husband and I literally just sat down and discussed everything, like put it out on the table. And I'm saying when you're dating, when you first meet someone and you're dating, go ahead, throw it out. I threw it out on the first date. We threw it out on the first date. Like, how are you with this? I'm good with this. Do you want to do this? Yeah, I'll do this. The rules and the guidelines of things. So, and things that are how should we say, not mainstream, or not, rigid the way that we, do it, but going outside of the box. You can have a partner who's bisexual and they can have those experiences. How does the other partner feel about that? So as I ramble, what do you think really is the main reason for the shame triggers that we have related to sex? And are they still there, do you think, or are they going away?
Well, I mean, I think they're pretty ancient. They date back, you know. It's
In
sex
the
is a
beginning of time.
powerful thing. Like when somebody's in their sexual sovereignty and they know how to wield their sexual power in a way that is powerful, it can be overwhelming. And so I think that's how the oppression of sexuality came about. It's like especially women's sexuality, like a woman who's really in her Shakti, really in her sexual prime, like that's a really amazing, powerful thing to witness. And I think it got oppressed by by this patriarchal society that we're still swimming in. And so, yeah, I would say we're still uncovering a shame. I think, the 60s, we had that wonderful sexual revolution. And I think we're in a much bigger one right now. It feels a lot more like collective. Even I go to Asia sometimes and talking to people there, it's a lot more free. There's a lot more freedom in places that, specifically have had way shut down talking about sexuality, and of course I grew up in California, so there's, more freedom in my whole life path. And it's just easy. People feel easy talking about it with me and Leah, because it's what we do and it's who we are, and we don't have any judgments around it. So I think there's still a lot of judgments, self-judgment, probably more than anything. I feel like, the person who's the most hard on you is generally you. And so if you can get over that hurdle, then you can really open up to having more conversations and experiencing more shame-free sexual experiences. But, and also even at, the level, whatever level we're at, where we've been in this practice and doing this for a couple decades now, we still have moments where we're like, oh, is it okay? Is it okay that I want that? Is it okay that I should talk about that on our Sex Reimagined podcast? Like, is it okay? Like we still have little hiccups, and I think so it's just normal. We're swimming in a collective consciousness of shame in general. And so if we're swimming in it, we're going to get wet from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah, shame is hardwired into our brains. And so there isn't a human alive that's not going to suffer from it. But like Brene Brown says, it's really important that we slay the shame monster. And it's another like path of self-inquiry. I know I had so much shame to disassemble. Grew up in a born-again Christian Pentecostal household. The newspapers called our church a cult. Was sexually abused for, God, 7 years or so in the family. And so there was so much religious shame and all this other shame as a result of sexual abuse. And I think the most painful part of my healing process was realizing that there was a part of me that actually liked the sexual abuse. So it was like I felt like my body was betraying me over and over and over again because my genitals liked it. It felt fucking good. And that was so painful.
Yeah.
That was so incredibly painful because as for women, for vulva owners, we have not been given permission to have this unconditional eros, that our eros could possibly be unconditional in our culture, to be unconditional by ourselves, that we could be that sexually liberated and free. We have mountains to climb. Mountains to climb. I'm in a course right now. You go through this world as an expert in a certain field and you want to keep on researching if you have a love of learning. And so right now I've been in a 6-month course having to do with kink and really understanding that whole other portal of sexuality and why are people fascinated with it and what is it with fetishes and why do we have these dark, yummy taboos. And as I've been studying tantra, which is the great beautifier of sex, now I'm studying this kinky stuff and it's really what makes sex dirty. And I love that the two are like opposite sides of the same coin, because what I'm noticing in the study of this is that it's just as cathartic It's just as spiritual. And what's unique about it is someone can face their fears, and by fetishizing their fears, they end up with an amazing orgasm as their reward. And in the investigation of this, what I'm noticing inside of myself is there are so many desires that I'm tapping into for the first time that I so deeply want to explore. And yet here I'm in another shame portal of it's not okay for me to want that. You know, this, we've not been giving permission to have the full range of our sexuality. And then even in my marriage, afraid to even give voice to some of these things because my marriage is so important to me. I don't want to risk anything in it. And so like I'm noticing, wow, isn't this wild? That even after all this time, after all this healing work, I'm still noticing the way that I drop the ceiling on my self-expression. And that's okay. In many ways, I'm also okay with that. I'm not going to be fully liberated likely in this lifetime, but I'm going to make steps towards that. I'm going to take steps towards that, but I'm going to do it with care. I'm going to do it with patience. I'm going to do it with self-trust. I'm going to do it with being more honest more and more and more of the time and trusting others to hold that for me. But this is an unfolding. I call it the great unfurling. And I really want to help contribute to us providing a world and an environment where women in particular, and men too, can step into this unconditional eros that is inside of ourselves, as long as it doesn't do any harm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that doesn't mean it's not painful. It
No,
just
I mean,
doesn't
yeah,
harm you.
go ahead. Sorry.
I think that, I think this is so important because I think it is what really saves people from, going outside of their marriages and, cheating on each other. And all of that stuff is usually coming from these places that don't get expressed, right? And so if we can express them, if we can really open up and be honest with ourselves, again, trusting ourselves, being honest with ourselves first and foremost, then we can share that with our love. And it doesn't have to get played out. It doesn't have to be even actualized. And I think I know Leah's marriage, and know her partner, and I know like how she's being patient and massaging and opening, and and I know he's coming along at his own pace, and so it's important. Like one person's pace is not always going to be the same as another person's pace, and so we need to be really honoring of that. Lots of couples that I work with, I might work with just the woman or just the man, and I hear about the other side, but they're not even ready to get on the call. They're not even ready for the coaching, so that's fine.
Right.
But you got to work with where you're at, and then honor where the other person's at, and realize that there's a different timing and a different pace, and it's often not going to be a match. Often in the beginning, you're like, this is amazing. We're all right on the same timeline here, and you are. It's part of the timing of coming together with someone, but that doesn't last, and so you just have to really be aware of that as you go into these long-term, if you're in a long-term relationship, and it's okay. And you have other moments where you are back on the same timeline again.
Yeah, and the trust and the open-mindedness works both ways. If you want to be heard, you need to hear and let them express things as well, so they don't feel judged. I find a lot of couples where they're so afraid to say what it is what they want, and I always say, but you tell them everything else you want. How come you can't tell them what you want in this? And I do find this is interesting. My husband and I'm going to get personal here. I'm going to share. My husband and I are so different personality wise, like in life, but sexually, we are like the most perfect match absolutely possible. And that was a fun
Right.
discovery because everybody else I had been with, it was a chore. I truly believe I was sexually abused by my first husband because it was never something I wanted to do. It was something I had to do. I was called names if I didn't do it. So I definitely felt that was part of my shame coming forward, and to have someone that open-minded. Now, this is something pretty common, I think, and you guys might agree or disagree with me. What I found was after my divorce, and I was, taking care of everything, raising three children as a single mom. Um, what I found was when I had sex, it was like just I let everything go because I felt I was so in control of everything in real life. And then when it came to sex, it was like, oh God, I just don't want to be in any control of that. And I found a lot of powerful women feel that way, where it's like we take care, we're good, we're like stringent about taking care of things, but then in the bedroom, it's completely different because it's freeing and nobody's counting on you to do anything. On that note, I've known people who have never had an orgasm. So, how do
Hmm.
you help either of those? Let's start
Mhm.
with the not ever having an orgasm, because that's to me one of the most important things that people are shameful about, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah. You
Yeah, I
know,
think, go ahead, Leah.
um, I teach women about the anatomy of arousal and men too, because most people don't know that women have as much erectile tissue inch for inch and ounce for ounce as men. So I want you to imagine a aroused male genitals, and now imagine that women have that too.
Mm.
Ours is just organized differently. And this is not something we were ever taught in sex ed. It's not something that they teach in medical school. So there's a reason why your doctor hasn't taught you, or your parents haven't taught you, or your sex ed teacher hasn't taught you. And it's not something that porn can teach you. So it's so important that we understand how this unfurling of women's arousal actually works. And most of that erectile tissue is on the outside. It's the vulva. There's a couple places inside of the vagina that has this erectile tissue. If you can engorge the outside of the vulva, which means having it get puffier and change its color to a deeper color, then the erectile tissue inside is going to already start to have some blood in it, which makes internal intercourse is going to be more pleasurable. There are four different neural pathways that carry orgasm up to the brain. And each one of those neural pathways has a different sensation, which means it's a different kind of orgasm. So when you can understand where the erogenous zones are that awaken these nerve endings, and then what to do to them once you find these nerve plexuses, then your ability to achieve orgasm increases exponentially. But no one's ever shown you. We usually we're just fumbling around, and we're lucky if we find it. So to educate yourself that there is so much being left on the table when it comes to female arousal and orgasm. We are limitless in nature. We just have to figure out how to plug in and then let the energy run us. The problem is we're all trying to run the energy. And that's where we get in trouble. We get tight. We have a hard time letting go. We find ourselves worrying and getting into our heads
Mm.
and not being able to deeply surrender. We are operating from a masculine archetype to move our world forward in every other sector of our life, which does not complement our ability to letting go and allowing that unfurling to happen in our systems. Plus, nobody knows how to touch us. So, one of the things I'd always tell people, not only do you need to understand how our arousal works, which is different than men. Again, most of us are not spontaneous arousal. We also have to understand that there are secondary erogenous zones. In order to wake up the female system, you want to touch her from the extremities in, not go straight to primary erogenous zones, which are dicks, clits, and nips. We want to be able to actually open up. How you hold a woman's hand can turn her on. And so when you start to realize that this is an art form. And one of the things I love about Tantra is that every cultured person would learn about the 64 arts. And those arts would be from tea serving to archery, but also to love. And love and sex was considered the highest form of the 64 arts. And so we are privileged in the United States not to be striving desperately for our survival. Therefore, we have the luxury to begin to study love as an art form. And hopefully those listening today will be inspired to do so.
Mm. I love that. Dr. Willow, what do you think?
I mean, Leah kind of just said it all. The only other thing I would add is, from a hormonal perspective, a lot of times anorgasmic women have very low adrenal reserve. They may also have anatomical things going on. There's lichen sclerosis, different things can happen with the physical body. So all of those can be healed, all of those can be addressed. And yeah, I think the most important thing that I would highlight that Leah says is you got to learn how to plug in to the sexual energy, not try to run it yourself. So there's a receiving. I would say that's the feminine's greatest superpower is to receive, receptivity. So how are you at receiving? If you are a woman or a man, men suck at it too, to be honest, and they need to learn it too. Yeah, because we live in a young dominant culture, right? Where it's drive, 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 go, 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 do, do, do. What did you do today? How much did you get checked off your to-do list? Are you, accomplished today because you got a lot done? Or did you just like go for a walk on the beach, take a nap and drink some tea? Is that valuable? So it's like, where are our values in our society being highlighted, being placed? And if we can kind of turn it on its head, it's not that we don't value getting the to-do list. That's still valuable. We just need to bring more value to the feminine, which is receptivity, surrender, allowing, trust, and so when we are in that receptive state and we actually have a meridian in our body, no matter what our gender is, we all have a meridian in our body that is simply the receptivity channel, so if we can really run high frequency emotions and feelings and sensations through that receptivity vessel in our body, then hot damn, we're turning ourselves into somebody who can receive. I mean, oftentimes my morning dog walks, I'm like, okay, what am I receiving right now? What am I receiving in this moment? What am I receiving today? Literally today, I was like, I need headphones in every single bag that I own, because I don't want to be looking in the other bag for the headphones anymore. 2 minutes later, I'm walking along and there's like headphones laying on the side of the road and they're perfectly clean and good and normal. I'm like, I'll wipe these down and there you go. So it's like if we surrender to the fucking unknown, because we don't know. We all want to know. We all think we know. And that is where we're stuck. And that is what causes suffering. If we can just allow the unknown to show us, then we're plugging into Shakti. Then we're receiving. Then sexual arousal, libido, levels of rapture come to you that you could not even dream up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just like in life. Like, stop overthinking everything, guys. It's almost like I was thinking it's ED of the vagina. When you're in your head and you're thinking so hard about doing that, you're stopping yourself from doing that because you're not letting go. And I think just doing that in life in general, just let it flow. Let anything flow in life. Never force it. Anything forced. What's that meme where they're holding on to the rope doing the tug of war and their hands are bleeding? They're basically saying the harder you grab on, the worse it is. So let go of the rope. Let go of the rope, friends. I'm fascinated with the fetish and kink as well. I have a funny story. I think you guys might enjoy this, a little anecdote. So I have a resale business and I sustain the planet because I think we're a throwaway society. And so I like to resell things that I think still have life in them. So one of those things was a pair of sandals. And I have never done this before, but I tried them on and I had my husband take a picture of it. Do you know, ever since that picture has gone up, I've probably had 50 men reach out and say,
with foot fetish.
I love your feet. Your feet are beautiful. One this morning said, I want to suck your toes and the sole of your foot.
Oh my God.
So that's Maureen,
that's hot.
It's like one of the biggest fetishes out there. Men and feet. It is a major, major business.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing.
So tell us about those fetishes and kinks and stuff. And this is a no judgment zone, listeners. So, listen with curiosity and not judgment, because I just think everybody is allowed to like what they want. If you like Coca-Cola and I like coffee, we have that right. So there's no judgment here. I just wanted to predecess that.
Yeah, don't yuck anybody's yums, okay, out there, everybody. Everyone gets to have their yums. And I love that you said find curiosity instead of judgments. And if you find yourself noticing a judgment, that's the way out of judgments is to get curious. Go, huh, that's interesting. I had that thought. And yeah, so as we go into these other corners, thank you, Maureen, for suggesting that. Willow, do you wanna take a hold of kink? Or you want me to start?
Why don't you kick us off?
Okay. I think the transgressive can be extremely hot. And that's where power dynamics and taboos really come into play. There's a great book called The Erotic Mind, and he did some amazing research taking a look at people's peak sexual experiences, where they would write in and give them all these stories about like the hottest sex they ever had. And then also, what do people fantasize of when they're getting themselves off? What's your go-to daydream that really helps you take you to the other side when you're self-pleasuring? And so as he collected all this material, and I think they're still doing this research, they would take a look at like, what are the patterns? And they saw 4 patterns that was a part of every single fantasy. At least one pattern, sometimes all 4 patterns were in these fantasies. One was longing. When you experience longing, and longing can show up in lots of different ways. Longing for the beloved because you're single. Longing for your marriage to be better. Longing for your partner because you feel jealous right now. It's like jealousy brings about a lot of longing. So we have these, longing is a huge aphrodisiac. Another aphrodisiac is power dynamics. Power over. I mean, if you open up any romance novel on your shelf, you are going to see it filled with power dynamics, right? We have the pirate and the captive. We have the driver and the cop. We have the older teacher and the college student. I mean, it is everywhere. And if you could crack open most women's heads, you are going to see power dynamics. And that builds so much sexual tension. It's so fucking hot. So you can consider that as you're kind of playing in the corners of your mind. Another one is the taboo. And one story that somebody wrote in always comes to my mind, and that is the teenage girl who's dating the bad boy who's in the band. And she's a little past curfew, and they're in the van in her driveway, and her dad hates this guy. So they quickly have sex, and she could get busted any minute. Like, do you know how much sexual tension is there when you're afraid you're going to get in trouble? It's kind of like fucking in the airplane, in the airplane bathroom. It's like where all of that comes from. There's so much sexual tension in these moments of the taboo. So, is it okay to lick somebody's toes? Well, some people would be disgusted by that. That's a yuck for them. While other people, because it's a yuck for somebody else, finds that to be just the biggest yum. And so we play with these taboos, and we have these transgressive experiences. In fact, if you look at romance novels, you'll see the transgressive on so many pages, of being stolen, of being the captive, of somebody who you're not supposed to like, you suddenly fall in love with. And then the last one, which I think is actually very interesting, is ambiguity. You actually have to get over something in order to succumb to it. And so if you just think about the affair, right? Like how many people cheat? That's taboo, right? You're not supposed to do that. There's usually a power dynamic, and there's longing. And then there's ambiguity. You have to overcome the vow that you spoke to not cheat. So it's very interesting how these things play out. And these are some of the things that are in the deepest parts of our mind. Someone wanting to be tied to a dining room table and blindfolded, where 8 men come in to pleasure her, but she doesn't know who they are and they're not allowed to talk. There's a lot of eros in so many of these thoughts and ideas. And that doesn't, like Willow has said, that doesn't mean that when you share this with your partner, or you share this with somebody new who you're dating, or you share this with your 3 boyfriends or 3 best friends, that you're not asking for that desire to be fulfilled, but to be witnessed in that desire is really hot. And then to be in a community of people where you feel safe and they create a scene for you to live out a morsel of this. This is what I think is so powerful about BDSM and kink in those communities. It's because there's a middle ending, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's negotiating what the scene might look like. There's grounding, and then there's the actual scene. And then there's the closing of the scene with aftercare. And then people go on with their lives. They don't necessarily have to attach themselves to these things. And there's different ways that people play with that. But I think that when we take our forbidden desires and we bring them out into the light and we have conscious ways of fulfilling them, then there's not a lot of harm that can be done. It's actually acting out these things in unconscious ways where it's filled with secrecy, that I think people feel betrayed and then they feel hurt and then the judgments arise. So I think there's a way for us to actually fulfill some of these darker, kinkier things in a way that's consensual and really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I agree
So
with you on
powerful.
that. The suppression part of it, we do that so much in life is we just suppress our desires. We just suppress the things we want. We don't think we deserve them, or we don't think it's okay in other people's eyes to have this thing.
Well, or the very worst end of that is it's so suppressed that it ends up leaking out sideways and we actually do harm to people. That's
yeah.
where child abuse and that's where rape and that's where these other things end up occurring. It's just like very much the suppression of our energy and of being abused at an earlier age, and then hurt people. And all of this comes from a deep suppression. And
Mm.
and so when we take that out of suppression and we're able to honestly talk about it, then those things can be healed and safely explored under certain conditions.
Oof, I love that you said that. It has to come out at some point. Just anything that is not serving us has to come out, right? At some point. Dr. Willow, what do you
Or we
think?
die miserably
You know,
in the
it's
present,
Or get
angry, bitter
sick.
people.
Yeah. Or
yeah.
get physically sick because
Right.
it's overspill, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these, taking your sexuality to this next level of kink, BDSM, this whole realm, it's again like, I really see it all as like becoming more whole. You get to be more of yourself. You get to actually bring more health and vitality into your being because you go through something that you don't think you can handle, or you don't think you can go through, or you don't think I would never do that, and it's like, and then, so I've been in a lot of situations and seen plays and things where it's like, we're playing with these archetypes, we're playing with these places inside of ourselves, like the shameful wretch, like the needy wretch, like who wants to be the needy wretch? Yeah, we all play it out in our lives in these subconscious ways. So what if we create a safe container where I get to be the fucking needy wretch and I just need you to love me so bad, and if you don't love me, oh my God, I'm gonna die, and it's just like it frees up the subconscious so that when we go back out into our regular day-to-day lives, we're not running that subconscious. We're more in our wholeness. We're more in the sovereignty of our true essence. And that's what sexuality really is about. In Chinese medicine, Jing Qi, there's 5 different kinds of Qi in Chinese medicine. And the one least talked about in Chinese medicine school is Jing Qi, right? Of course. And so Jing Qi means essence. So it's your essence. That's what we're building up more. That's what we're getting closer to. That's what we're creating a more intimate relationship with, is our own essence, So that's, again, one of the first things that I give clients is like, what does your essence look like? What does your essence do? How does it adorn itself? How does it move through the world? What kind of light shines through its eyes? Who's attracted to this essence? Like, draw a picture of it, write a poem of it, like get it out onto something so that you have a visual of it, create an altar for your essence, so that you can then be making love to your essence. Even if you're with another person, you're with a partner, a longtime partner, or a brand new partner, it doesn't matter. You are making love to your own essence. Like that is part of the experience. And so when we take these, we're coming from this like sacred sexuality background. Both of us, we've been teaching this for years, and
Mhm.
now we're stepping more into BDSM and kink world. And so we have this beautiful foundation that's giving us a different perspective probably on what BDSM and kink allow. I think that the whole realm of kink and BDSM is vast. It's super vast, and it can, sometimes it can be look like abuse. Sometimes it can feel like that. I've had teachers actually who've been in abusive relationships and situations, and that is a whole different way of holding it, a whole different realm. And there's learning within that too, and there's healing within that as you come through that and come out of it. So there's no right or wrong way to do kink. And it's really like, this is what our whole podcast is about. It's like reimagining what sexuality is, from like, okay, now I want to be tied up, gagged, and flogged. That's one new reimagining of what sexuality could be, to like, I'm going to go do qigong with a tree. That's another reimagining of what sexuality could be. So check out our podcast, because we're always talking about all kinds of crazy cuckoo stuff like this.
I love it. I'm in a million percent. Oh my gosh, perfect, absolute perfect timing. I love everything about you two. I totally agree with you. And the one thing I would say is, if you're exploring this with your partner, just be open about what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. Nobody needs to be pressured into anything they're not comfortable with, but also let's be willing to like take little steps, just like in regular life. Trying to change something means we just do something different, just one little thing differently. And I feel it bonds you to your partner. And there's these moments, when you've had these experiences with your partner, and you can look across the room and you guys have this secret. I just think that's the sexiest thing in the entire world. Like, nobody knows that you were just, smacking my ass an hour ago. It's fun. So we just have to be open-minded. So my ladies, let's go ahead and let's tell everybody where to find you, anything you have going on. I know you had done a summit a while ago. Let's share everything about you. I want everybody to be able to find you.
Sure. You can find Willow at drwillow.com, drwillowbrown.com. You can find me at moreloveworks.com. You can find us at sexreimagine.com. And we have a free gift for all of your listeners. If you go to sexreimagine.com/adventure, you can pick a door. We have an adventurous 3 doors that you can pick that will give you a tutorial on various topics. So for instance, I think we have one on sexual obstacles. We've got one on sexual healing and one on intimacy. And when you open up one of those portals, you'll get 3 to 4 different trainings, and to get you started into expanding your intimate life.
Oh, I love that. Sex Reimagined/adventure.
Yeah. And then you
Okay.
can find our podcast on any wherever you listen to podcasts. I in particular suggest you watch us on YouTube.
Yeah, you have to see these beautiful women, because when you hear them talking about sex and then you see how beautiful they are, it's just a whole package. So, Dr. Willow, do you have anything that you want to promote or share with us? Anything, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just, Leah and I do online coaching with people as well. And sometimes we tag team with clients. And that's a really wonderful thing that we offer, because people like to kind of get both perspectives. And it's really fun when we get to do that with clients. So go on over to Sex Reimagined, and you can reach out to us and talk to us about that there. You can set up a free consult, and we'll get you going.
Love it. 2 for 1. How lucky are your clients? That is super amazing. And I just thank you both for being here with us today. I know that the listeners got a whole lot of stuff out of it, like I did. And I feel like I got to sit down with, like if you love football, you got to sit down with your favorite player. I kind of feel like I did that today with you too. So
Aw,
I feel like
thanks, Maureen. That's sweet. We
everything
had so much fun.
Everything about you guys is so amazing. So, listeners, that's going to do it for this week. I love you all for being here. Speaking of coaching, I as well do confidence, self-esteem, all those things to bring you to that place where you love yourself before you go out into the world or you go out into the dating world. I do dating coaching and relationship coaching as well. So having this talk about sex, and that's such a big part of when we do your coaching of, learning who you are and what you want and how to attract the exact thing that you need. And I love the sexual blueprint idea. That is fan freaking tastic. So other than that, that's me. All one-stop shop. You know where to find me, lifecoachmaureen.com, where my books are there as well as my coaching and then the podcast. So my books, my dog is more enlightened than I am. My dog is my relationship coach, and my children's book, My Dog Bexley is Just Like Me, teaching our little ones mindfulness and self-love early on. That's for our little 6-year-olds and under. Let's see, what else do we have for you? Oh, don't forget our doggy boutique. I make healthy treats in my kitchen, and there's only 3 ingredients, no preservatives, no xylitol in your peanut butters, and lots of apparel and fun stuff. And we even have doggy Crocs. So if you're not going to our website, you're missing out. So that is mydogiseverything.net. So thank you guys. Go leave a review. Tell me how much you absolutely loved Leah and Dr. Willow as I did. Leave your comments if you have any ideas for a show or you want to be a guest. Feel free to reach out at my contact page on lifecoachmaureen.com. So until next week, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Most of all, take care of those furry babies. And please, 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 let's adopt and do not shop, especially with holidays coming up. We don't need to buy puppies. We need to go rescue one of the precious babies that are waiting for a forever home. So I love you all until next week. Mwah!